You're listening to Break Your Ego, Find Your Soul with Ramsey Bergeron.
On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about my 10-day silent Vipassana meditation experience, where it's 10 days of noble silence, no talking, no music, no reading, no writing, no exercising, with a guest, Brian Sim, who's a fellow meditator who I met at the course. So it's a really interesting conversation talking about what we learned and what the experience was like. Hope you enjoy. Brian, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Ramsey. Thanks for having me on today.
Hey, thanks for rolling the punches and the technical difficulties here. So, Brian, you had not done a retreat. So, I guess before we even talk about that, tell us a little about yourself. Have you done meditation before? Have you done one of these retreats before?
Never done a retreat before. I've dabbled in mindfulness. I think everyone during their quarter life crisis wants to know what's going on out there. But outside of that, very little experience with this. I've done a bit of Kundalini yoga in the past. They want you to wake up pretty early, so that didn't last very long. All of this was really, really new for me.
Okay, awesome. I guess we're going to talk a little bit about what our experience was, and we are taking live questions. So if you're watching this live and you have a question you want to ask, type it in the chat. It should pop up on my screen here, and we'll ask it. So I guess starting off, Brian, it was really helpful because when we first got there, I was able to chat with you and a few of the other guys because one of the problems is, well, for 10 days you can't talk, or for 9 of those days you can't say anything. You can't say anything at all. So before we even really signed in, there were a few of us there who we went to our cells and dropped our stuff off, and then went down to the hall and was like, "Hey man, is this your first time here?" It's like, yeah. And so we got to chat for maybe 15, 20 minutes before things kind of got going. And you were one of those guys, so I really appreciate that because it really made me feel a lot more comfortable throughout the process.
Oh, that was huge. I felt like I had a lifeline out there, other people with a common experience. There were the same faces day in, day out, but just having a short conversation with each of you really made me feel like we were in it together.
Yeah, I agree. And even though there were the same faces day in or day out, you couldn't really communicate with them.
No, you just had what you imagined about them.
Yeah. So not only, so it's a Vipassana. I'm going to be pronouncing it wrong. I apologize. Vipassana retreat. And Vipassana means seeing the truth, right? Seeing reality for what it is. And it's a very unique style of meditation. Like, it was unlike anything that I had experienced before. I've always been used to breathing in, I am breathing in, breathing out, I am breathing out, just calming the mind down. And the way that I thought about it was like, if a little kid falls and skins their knee, you're going like, it's okay, don't cry, it's going to be okay. Like, that's what I was doing to my brain with the meditation I was doing before. This was absolutely not that. This was concentrating the mind to a singular point and then using it to experience reality. Because so many of us, and I guess one of the things, Brian, for me at least, the takeaway was that we never exist in this moment. Our mind is always either in the past or the future, which I kind of knew from the Power of Now, but not how bad it was. And that Buddhism, I guess, when they say that the Four Noble Truths, and that life is suffering, and it's because even happy thoughts cause you suffering. Because if something bad happened or something we're happy about in the past, like, oh, that was great, and then we either crave it or cling to it, and then that causes us unhappiness because we think we might not have it anymore.
Right. We never want it to end. We always want to go back there. So we're not even really enjoying it during the moment.
Yeah. And the 3 causes of all unhappiness, which I found interesting, was either craving, aversion, or ignorance. And pretty much all unhappiness boils down to those 3 things. And it comes from not being in the present moment. And remember, if you have questions for us, feel free to type in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them for you. And I thought another great parallel that they made day one of the discourse was, like, if you think about locking yourself in a room with a wild monkey, just like people freak out, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? You got to learn to train that monkey. And that's like in our mind, like we sit there, like the thought of meditating for 10 hours a day can be very daunting. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be stuck in there. But that's the same mind you used to make. You used to make all of your decisions.
Absolutely. The monkey parallel was great. Branch to branch, swinging around. Your thoughts are going a million miles an hour. Another comparison was a raging bull. I thought that was actually spot on. For me, I was thinking of a chicken, like a little chicken going around. I'm trying to catch that chicken. I'm trying to concentrate. Never caught that chicken.
Well, did you find you were closer to catching the chicken, like through the class?
I would grasp it. It would get away. I would
Yeah.
grasp it. It would get away.
So I guess for those of you who maybe don't really know what the class, the 10 days entailed, I'm going to share this my screen here to let you know what a typical day looked like for us with that. And this is what it kind of is here. So you wake up 4 a.m. They walk around with the bell, the gong outside. They wake you up. You have 30 minutes to kind of, take care of whatever you need to take care of before that, and then start meditating 30 minutes after that. So 2 hours of meditation. You could either go down to the hall where is the group hall that we had to be in for 3 hours of the day. You had the option to go in there before that if you wanted. And then after that, you have a breakfast break, 6:30. Then you're back to meditating for an hour. And some days after that, the teacher had like the new students, which like Brian and I were there our first year, or old students. And if we weren't in the room there, we were back in the room meditating. Lunch break. And when it says rest and interview the teacher noon to 1, that's a little deceiving because you could only schedule 5 minutes in that to interview the teacher. And I got gonged like to get out of there, like because there's 70 students and one teacher and you only have 5 minutes. So it can be, you don't have a whole lot of time. And that's the only time also that you can talk, because this is a 10 days or 9 days of noble silence. So there's no speaking to anyone for 9 days. And then on the 10th day, they say it's kind of like a, what do they say? Shock absorber to kind of get you used to talking. Brian, what was that like for you being after like 9 days of silence and then talking after that?
Oh, they said it'd be a soothing balm after the surgery. For me, it was like, ah! And I'm just talking, listening. Listening felt so good.
Yeah. It was, some of that. We do have a comment here in the chat too. So Christine asks, did you find it more beneficial for you to start in your room or in the hall? And did you change the routine during the 10 days? Great question. Brian, let's start with you.
I woke up at 4 naturally, which I've never done before in my life. I would take a hot shower really quick and then get into the hall because there's too much temptation in your room to lie down, spread out. 5 minutes of laying down, that would take up your whole hour basically, because you'd wake up from a peaceful dream. Every day, I started the morning in the meditation hall, and I would strongly recommend it because the energy in the hall is going to be a lot different than the energy in your own room.
Yeah. So my experience is a little different. So the first day, so I usually wake up at 3:30 anyway on a typical day for work. So I got to sleep in 30 minutes before 4 a.m. But the larger problem for me was usually when I wake up in my normal routine, I get coffee right away. So the first day I didn't have coffee, and I take Vyvanse. I'm prescribed Vyvanse, and but they said that please disclose to the teacher if you're taking any medications. And so I thought this was going to be a relaxing retreat where I wouldn't need my Vyvanse, where I don't need to concentrate. I'm there to just kind of connect and woosah and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't bring enough for the whole time. So the first day I didn't take any Vyvanse, and I didn't take my coffee. You have no access to coffee until breakfast is 6:30. So I was sitting in my room and trying to meditate, and I had the worst caffeine withdrawal, and I went from Vyvanse and caffeine to nothing. Day one was very challenging for me. I started going to the hall after that. So I would wake up at 4, and the first thing I would do, because I've had 2 backs, I would walk. We had a quarter-mile track outside, and it's beautiful. You're right up against Joshua Tree. And so I would walk because you don't stretch first thing until you move a little bit. So I'd walk at least for 10 minutes outside. And then I started borrowing coffee from the day before to bring to my room so I could make coffee at 4 a.m. just in my sink to help me not get a headache, and use that. And then I would go to the hall. And I to Brian's point, it helped me be in the routine. It helped hold me accountable. And some days I couldn't stay the whole 2 hours in there. I would do an hour in the hall, then an hour back in the room, and then go to breakfast. But yeah, I try to meditate in the hall as much as possible for that same reason. Now, it wasn't as comfortable. If you're in your room, you can lean up against the wall. you can't lean up against the wall in the hall. You have your own little area there.
Right.
And it was really interesting because day one, we're all sitting there like, oh, we're all yogis. We're all just on these little mats. And then by the end of it, we had all built contraptions because they have cushions and pillows there. And day one, you might have one. By the end of it, I had a back jack, which is like this little tripod thing I could lean up against, and little anchors under my knees to kind of keep me going. So from a comfort perspective, my routine also changed. But it's amazing how comfortable it did end up feeling by the end there.
Agreed.
Yeah, so I guess a little bit about the technique. I'm not going to try to teach it to you guys, but kind of the whole premise of it is we talk about how all of suffering is because your mind's either in the past or the future, and the only thing real is in this moment. And that, in order to sense that, you have to feel the sensations that you're feeling in this moment in the body. And so once you spend the first 3 days just focusing on the breath, you can't have any mantras, you can't have any visualization because it's a distraction. You just have to hone the brain for 10 hours a day for 3 days. And then you start like scanning the body and just feeling the different sensations that are occurring. And and this is what they call the sits of determination, where you don't move for an hour. Brian, what was your experience with that?
Super difficult. I thought, an hour's fine. Those first 3 days, like you said, I just had the mat, I think one little cushion. I was trying to do my best, but 20 minutes, 30 minutes would kick in, the back, the ankle, the knees, everything would start to scream out. So, eventually I got to a point where I could sit for the full hour without moving. But again, that was with a lot of contraptions, the back support, many cushions, finding a comfortable posture. And you do get to see some of the mental struggle as well. I just tried to see, okay, the whole time before going to the trip, I'm like, what if my nose itches? What if my nose itches? Well, yeah, my nose was itching a lot. I tried. I would refrain. Eventually, if it's just too much, it's too much. But yeah, you actually can by the end of it sit for an hour, no problem.
Yeah. Christine says, I can't seem to sit perfectly after 10 minutes and I need to wiggle for a few seconds. Hours sound so challenging. Well, they do at first, but again, this is where the unhappiness comes in of aversion. And one of the things this teaches you is no itch lasts forever. Right. And it's, just by looking at it objectively, like, oh, there's an itch. All right, where's the itch start? And because you're scanning the body, sometimes the itch is not in a place you're even scanning. Like if I'm scanning the body and I'm concentrating on my left arm, and then there's an itch on my right leg, it's like, all right, well, I'm not thinking about the right leg right now. When I get there, the itch might even be gone. And a lot of times I would notice that would happen where, you're teaching your body to, I guess, kind of blur the line between the conscious and the subconscious, because you've got the subconscious kind of running in the background, usually taking care of all of these things. And in doing this, you're taking over and you're looking inward at and taking over from the subconscious, which really allows you to really kind of get in your own psyche, which we'll also get into. But once you learn to sit, and I also found that once I can see the reason for the sits of determination, because with not moving, you can start to look at the pains and the itches. But it also got me so much more focused. It got me, once I stopped thinking about how uncomfortable I am and I just accepted it. All right, now I can do the work.
Right. I mean, the mental aspect is so important. And every time you do move, they're right, you're going to lose your concentration. So, I was thinking of it as really the first time having a true relationship with my body. Everything before was just on autopilot. You want to scratch something, you want to move something, stretch, you do it. And there was no buffer in between. Now being more conscious of what's going on, I think that was, helping to strengthen, both the mind and body to the point where you could, give this practice a true go.
Yeah. It's I think that we're a slave to habits, and whether the habit is just on autopilot, like, I have a scratch, I'm going to itch it. I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. I'm depressed, I'm going to eat. Like, we're just on autopilot. And this really helps teach you, you don't have to operate that way. Like, to just be present in this moment and stop seeking things for comfort, like this aversion or avoidance. Like, oh, I'm itching, I have to scratch it, or it's not going to go away. And by listening and just looking at it objectively, it really kind of helps you not do that. So I do want to kind of shift subjects for a slight second here, because we mentioned meditation and looking inward, and even though it's based on Buddhist principles, it's not a secular class. But Brian, I know you and I chatted very briefly, but you still had a little bit of a, I guess it caused a little discomfort in you. Just tell me about that.
Well, I was attracted to this because this was, open to all religions or no religions. This was something that's for everybody, universal. I really respected that part of the practice. And as we went through it, the technique was explained in very scientific terms. Some of it was above my head, but I really, tried to do my best to understand the science of it, the mind-body connection. And they do, it's fascinating. And you start to get little nuggets of insight, and you start to feel maybe I'm understanding a little bit of what this is all about. But as we go through with the discourse, some of the anecdotes from S.N. Goenka revolved naturally with his own experience and how he perceptualized what was at play here. Some of the concepts were foreign to me. I know some of the basic tenets of Buddhism, but when we spoke about past lives and essentially making up for some of the mistakes, problems, anger, lying, stealing, cheating, all of the issues from the past, I really had a hard time coming to grips with that. Again, there's in no way, shape, or form any pressure to become a Buddhist. I think at most there might be observing the Buddhist way of life, maybe adopting some lifestyle practices. So I think, Ramsey, you'll probably get into the 5 precepts we were all required to follow. But, without getting too deep into the precepts, just based on my upbringing, trying to come to terms with past lives and how that fits in with what the work we're doing now, I struggled with that.
What was your upbringing, if you don't mind me asking? So people.
Yeah, I grew up with various non-denominational Christian churches, and now I'm a practicing Catholic. So, that my religion is always at the core, and you don't want to do anything to tarnish, step on, disrespect what is, something so fundamental to you. At the same time, you're always going to grow, challenge, question, try to get a better understanding and grow stronger in the faith. And I think this practice absolutely helps you, whatever your faith background is or no faith background, helps you kind of come closer to your core and your core principles and belief.
Yeah, no, very well said. I know for one of the analogies that they used that I thought was great was there's 3 different kinds of wisdom, and the wisdom of what someone's told you, the wisdom you intellectualize, and then the wisdom you experience.
Right.
And how they call this tradition Dhamma, which is, they say, it's just the laws of nature. Like, if you're looking at the fact that from a science perspective, the human brain's evolved to keep you unhappy. And there's a book here that I got that I highly recommend. And it's called Why Buddhism is True. And it's from a science approach. It's not from a religious approach. It's like, look, it's an evolutionary psychologist that wrote it, talking about like why we've evolved the way to be unhappy, and how the meditation techniques in Buddhism really can help you break out of that pattern. And in regards to those 3 things, like the wisdom you're told, the wisdom you intellectualize, and the wisdom you experience, the Vipassana really is wisdom you can experience. It's like, look, do this technique and it works. And for me, I got to say it worked in regards to really being able to find just the fact that I'm energy, just really be able to find the fact of being happier. And, let's talk a little about, because it's one thing to say that it worked for me while I'm at a camp. It's kind of like if I go on Biggest Loser, hey, I lost all this weight. The real test is once you get back to the real world, how do you feel that it fits in? And I know, we've been back a short 4 or 5 days, but Brian, how do you feel you're fitting in the world?
There's a definite difference in how I approach things, and I think people around me can notice it. We cannot expect a miracle from a 10-day program. However, some of the skepticism and everything that builds up, what S.N. Goenka kept on preaching was regardless of all that, try the practice and see if there is incremental improvement in your life. And that's what I wanted to take back with me. I have a very, very hot temper. I go off so quickly before I even realize what's going on. And especially now, raising a daughter, I want to be a little more relaxed, a little bit more in the moment with her, and not so quick to lose my cool. Before, she was stumbling, she was tripping. Every scratch or bruise, I was losing my cool. And now I'm able to at least have a little bit of space. Taking a breath before things are going on, feeling what's going on inside my body, in addition to the breath, and that kind of helps frame things a little bit differently. So I'm actually looking at, okay, well, she fell down, let's take care of that, versus why did she fall down? That's, life is so unfair. And, that kind of is just one example, but in numerous cases, I've become a much gentler driver. I think in this in LA, I was probably a terror. And now I'm probably letting people go right ahead of me.
Nice. And I want to circle back to a point you made earlier about like when they were talking about reincarnation and just the dissonance you had with your beliefs. A point that they did make that I do want to kind of reinforce is they said, look, even if you don't believe in past lives or next lives, how about being happier in this one? So they do say, like, the Buddhist tradition of, believing, and it ties in with, they say energy is not created or destroyed, like essentially your life force goes on. But even if you don't believe that, that's fine. This will make you happier for this life. I thought that was a nice little way to kind of tie it in there. And they did talk about the different religions, but just bring up like, and pretty much all religions have the same core tenets. All religions are pretty much saying live a moral life, don't sin, and do your best. Mm-hmm. The 5 precepts we had to have while we were there was abstain from killing any being. So I think I minored in being a bug valet while I was there. Like, just they gave you a bug relocator, like this little piece of Tupperware. It's in your room, and you just got to trap them and let them outside. So I had, like, I think 4 spiders, a couple of ants, and a moth that I had to escort out. So no killing any being, abstain from stealing, abstain from sexual misconduct, abstain from wrong speech, which that one's pretty easy when you can't talk, and abstain from all intoxicants. And when you go back, they pretty much want you to follow that, to continue to live that life. What are your thoughts on those, Brian? Any struggles with those?
I think it's perfect while you're at the 10-day course to follow the precepts. They make a lot of sense for what you're trying to achieve. Coming back, I think a lot of people struggle with one or more. But thus far, I have been able to follow the same lifestyle. I have not had meat since I've been back. I haven't had a beer. So anyone who knows me knows that's just crazy. But right now I feel good, and I want to continue this practice.
Nice. I know for me, I know you said, or maybe you didn't say, so I guess tell me a little bit about your spirituality, or kind of how this affected you.
Well, I'm a big bibliotherapy kind of guy. I read so many books, whether it's self-help, New Age spiritualism, religious texts. And I've always, kind of been faith-driven in terms of how I live my life and decision-making. This was a practice I wanted to grow on top of that. What led me here wasn't so much any of the Buddhist principles. It was a curiosity. About 15 years ago, I had read a trio of books by Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn, PhD. He wrote Full Catastrophe Living, and he talked a lot about mindfulness, and he also spoke about a program he has in Massachusetts called the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Clinic. And it's a 2-month program. And I always, in the back of my head, I always said, one day I want to take this. I want to, live in the moment. I want to slow down, calm down, see what's really real in front of me. And of course that never happened. But a family friend, she had taken the course. She's taken a number of courses, and there was just a glow about her, and maybe a bit of a sparkle or a twinkle in her eyes, and just a feeling, a sense of peace. And that sounded really, my wife strongly encouraged me to sign up for this course to see if I could get in. And she was encouraging me throughout to attend. And, that's how I got to the program.
Great. So how did you first hear about it?
Through the family friend.
Gotcha. Through the family friend. Gotcha. See, I found that on an app. I was looking for. I've started kind of a spiritual journey the last couple of years. Like last July 1st, my best friend died, and I had, and what honestly, funny enough, what got me started on Buddhism was The Last Dance, the documentary. Because I'm like, you know what? Phil Jackson really has his shit together all the time. And I was intrigued by it. So I guess last June, I got a book called The Heart of the Buddha, based honestly on Phil Jackson. And I was so impressed with just what I was reading there. And then I was looking up like, hey, I want to find some apps that really help me learn more about Buddhism or some retreats. And then I found the Vipassana course. And I found it fascinating. And it was scary. So I used to not be. I went to Catholic school for 6 years growing up, which meant I didn't believe in anything. So I was religion was kind of forced on me. So I kind of really turned my back on it. And then just within the last couple of years, I started seeking out what is my higher power and really feeling a connection with nature. And then these teachings just made a lot of sense to me. So on the 10th day we did get to talk, which was really interesting. The guys and girls just kept separate, so the guys could talk. So we were there and finding out what everyone's experiences were. And some people really had talked about how even psychedelics brought them to that same place. Like essentially, you keep looking in for meditation until you feel the exact moment of reality, and that's enlightenment. And how that can feel crazy to people who've never experienced that. And that is to people I've talked to. That's kind of the spiritual journey, is just realizing that you can be happy right now. Well, you're enlightened. You don't have to wait to die to feel like nirvana. You can experience nirvana in this moment by channeling it in. And I got close a couple of times while I was there. Like, again, it's a 10-day class. It's not like it's not a, enlightenment factory. They're not just churning out, you don't walk out of there like floating in your car, but I can at least see the path. Well, it was the dust you couldn't see, because it's 29 palms in August. It was a lot. So those few tea breaks and stuff that we got to have, usually you might be able to even just go to the walking path. Exercise isn't allowed either, but you can't even walk outside because it's August in the desert in Southern California. Right. I don't think it was cloudy once. I think we might have had it was some raindrops one day, but very light, and they were gone. It was really hot, which made you really just kind of focus on going inside, because you sure as heck couldn't go outside. So what was your biggest takeaway? And by the way, we're still taking questions. And I have one that someone else had submitted to, but I'll get to. But Brian, what was your biggest takeaway from the class?
Biggest takeaway was that there is another way of living. Just because we grow up and we're conditioned by our family, our society, whatever, schooling, education, whatnot, there's a different way. And I'm a very stubborn person. I felt very set in my ways. I was convinced that I had life figured out. All the things that would bother me, I could find ways around them. A lot of it was entertainment, food, alcohol. Almost formulaically, I could keep my mind occupied. The greatest fear I had was being alone with my thoughts. I could never ever bear the very idea of it. So from the moment I woke up with the radio, listening to books in the shower, driving, listening to sports radio, and knowing every single day when I come home from this time to this time, I'm watching baseball, I'm watching basketball. My mind is completely occupied, going to sleep with the TV on every night. I think for the last 20 years, I've gone to sleep with the TV on. So coming to this program, the moment your phones are taken away, this is brand new territory we're talking here. And I've never experienced anything like that. But the benefit was there's no choice. There you are. You want to go? You don't have your car keys anymore. You don't have your phone anymore. Where are you going to go?
Yeah.
And for the first time, being alone with my thoughts and surviving, maybe even thriving, I think that was a crazy experience, crazy part of that journey, and that's my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, awesome. And to your point, like I remember, because whenever your doors don't lock, and I remember walking out like, oh, I gotta get my phone, and like how the first couple of days I kept like reaching for it and it's not there, and just what a tether it is for me. You had something else you say about, well, first off, your anger is understandable because you're a Dodgers fan and you watch baseball. So I get that. I guess for me, the biggest takeaway is that you can reach that point it made me stop intellectualizing and start experiencing like the importance of that, and that you can be happy without taking a drug or without eating or without, just the vices of the world. And there were a couple of times when I was meditating where I did feel bliss. And I'm like, oh, I'd never felt that before. Just like sitting, concentrating on your energy. It feels amazing. It feels, so incredible. Christine just posted, it's refreshing to hear that reminder. You can always grow and always change and grow closer by yourself and have a relationship with your body, no matter how old you are when you start the journey. Brian, I don't know I think you're quite as old as I am. I'm 42 and I have just now discovered how to feel okay. And that's literally how to feel okay without something else or someone else or something else that I think that I need. And it's such a, it's all within your control when you realize that nothing is personal. Like, that if your leg falls asleep, it's not like there's some pain demon in it, like, oh, I'm going to get you. Like, no, it's not personal. You look at it objectively, like, okay, my leg's hurting, and you just observe it for what it is. And I found that to be very helpful. What were your other thoughts, Brian? Well, what did you think about the experience in the center that we went to? Like just the facilities and how the thing was run?
Yeah, I know they have centers around the world. This, Southern California just happened to be closest for me. I have to say, the accommodations, the food, the whole experience, top notch. It exceeded all of my expectations. I was going in expecting very Spartan conditions, but you have your own. Over here at least, you have your own space. I was able to set up a little meditation corner with my cushions, and it's really everything you need in terms of the residences. The food was the best part. That's what I was looking forward to. 11 a.m. I think you and I were probably the first ones there.
Yeah.
Most afternoons. I thought the food was fantastic. I've never really lived a vegetarian lifestyle, and I don't know if the food was really good or I was just really hungry. But I devoured everything that came our way, and I felt so good physically. I felt so good. That's why I'm trying to replicate some of the eating times and some of the options they provided. I'm trying to carry that forward right now. So, I don't know if this was mentioned earlier, but again, there is no cost to attend this 10-day program, which I could not wrap my head around. I kept thinking, well, how does that make sense? How is this right? And of course, there's opportunity to provide for others who you want to take part in this journey, but not until after you've completed a 10-day course, which is just magical.
Yeah, they won't accept a dime from you until you complete the course. And part of it is, and they made a good point, and again, when I say we weren't having open dialogues. We watched a 1-hour video every night from Goenka, who's the founder of the school, who was taught by essentially from 300 years after Buddha up until now, there has been a direct line of succession keeping this kind of pure. And they don't accept any money because they don't want you feeling like, oh, well, I want my food this way, or this is how I want my accommodations. It's like, no, you have no say in it. You're there on the charity of others. To just kind of teach you how to be humble. Now, once you're done with the course, you can donate to then help other people start the path towards enlightenment. So I thought that's a great point. And the food was incredible. It was all vegetarian. And I agree. I know you and I were there in line first at lunch. I think there's another important point, though. I know we're talking about how great it was. Brian, both you and I wanted to quit.
Yes.
So tell me about your experience about wanting to quit.
I remember during the first day of discourse, he talked about how hard, day 2 would be, and also how day 6 would be. And SN Goenka was not wrong. Day 2, you actually realize what day 1 was, and there's 9 more days of this. Yeah, I don't know if this is for me. I was okay with that day, but day 6, I really thought this is just not the right choice for me. I have invested this amount of time, but I don't want to stay here anymore because, why am I cultivating this if I can't agree? And a lot of this came from the discourse. And, to be fair, the discourse was my favorite part of each and every day, other than the food. The discourse was just really just impactful and helped just open up new ways of thinking. But taking something from the discourse, being at home, being in your room with no TV, no radio, no books, no writing materials. Of course, you're just thinking of the discourse. And part of it was kind of, how everything rises and falls, how we need to take a very observational approach, right? Observe objectively. And when thoughts would pop up, thoughts of the past, happy or sad, I was thinking about them. And it started to feel like I was thinking about them in a third person. Brian did this and Brian reacted that way. And there was this feeling of disassociation that made me really, really sad. And I was thinking, I don't want to live that way. I don't want to be so disconnected from, what I feel is myself, my past, my experiences. So I signed up for a private interview with the teacher, Philip P. And I just told him very clearly, I don't think I'm understanding. I'm not happy right here, right now. And I don't think I'm, understanding the discourse, or if I am, this is not for me. But he did help me explain, we are not looking at each and every one of our experiences and trying to, say this has no relation to us, or we're just being, rational and non-judgmental. Life just doesn't work that way. But that feeling, you get so mad when there's something going on inside of you. You're observing that feeling inside of you objectively, and how you get there. It takes this practice, starting with understanding the respiration, the breath, but also understanding, once you've gotten there, what is going on in your body, because you are responding to what's going on in your body. You have a biochemical reaction, and that is what makes you upset or happy. And when he framed it that way, purely, through the physiology, that helped me kind of realign everything, because I wasn't going to figure all of this stuff out. But when he gave me one point to focus on that made sense to me, that helped me continue the practice. And I was pretty fervent from that point forward.
Yeah, the way they explained it to me, because I was ready to quit day 6, but tried to quit day 7 and they wouldn't let me. And to your point, if there was a front desk where I could have gotten my keys from the bellman and been gone, I'd have been like, I'm out.
Yeah.
But mine wasn't related to the practice. Mine was related to my ADD. And because, as Christy mentioned earlier, like hard to sit still for so long, when I'm usually used to taking certain amount of milligrams of Vyvanse a day, and I only brought enough for half for 7 of the days, and then after that, I had nothing. Every little sound in the room, my ADD would go to. So you've got 70 people in a small room, and people we're animals. So people are sniffling, people are snorting. Someone over here is coughing. Someone over here is sighing constantly during, 10 hours a day for 10 days. So I couldn't. And then it's kind of like if you have a neighbor's dog that's barking that wakes you up, and then you're trying to fall back asleep and you're out of the side of your ear, you're just waiting for it. Like, bark one more time, MFR, just do it one more time. There was someone in the room making a particular sound that I then keyed in on. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and then it was under my skin. But part of this process is realizing that emotions are just, that's the energy you're feeling in the body. So I'm like, all right, so but my anger, which was one of my emotions, was coming up. That anger was manifesting, and that's some of the energy I was feeling, and just how powerful that was. I had to work through that, and it was great because once I worked through getting that anger out, it's like I felt like cleaner, like a lot better, and I remembered I had earplugs. So when I came back down, I was going to use them to sleep, but I brought the earplugs down, and it's kind of a double-edged sword because, yes, I'm no longer hearing everyone else. But now, if you ever wear earplugs and you can hear your own inner biology even louder, so now you're sitting with that.
Yeah.
And also found it interesting day 3 that they serve beans. I'm like, these are brave people serving beans to a room full of meditators who have to sit there in silence. And then they doubled down and served us cabbage at lunch the next day, which I think was almost evil because it sounded like whale song with some of our GI systems in there. But you got to get past that.
There was a direct correlation. I found the less I spoke, the more I farted. So I don't know what the connection is, but I was coming out one way or another.
I was behind you, Brian. I don't appreciate that. My little meditation square was a little off to the side, but all right, this is making a lot more sense now.
And our relationship has never been stronger.
Yeah, exactly. So we're friends now. We bonded. So would you do this again?
That was the first question I would ask the old students. What motivated you? What would drive you to do this again? I understand the curiosity and wanting to learn about it, but coming back now, Goenka does recommend coming once a year as kind of an annual tune-up. And I, the first day after the retreat, I was thinking, I just don't think I'm going to have the time to commit. But I have been continuing the practice in my own home, and I found it's very, very different than what we went through for those 10 days in seclusion without any distractions. I have to say also, just the energy at the center was so good and perfect for learning this technique, perfect for meditating. So I strongly right now I would say I'm leaning towards going back, whether as an old student or whether as a server. I spoke to some of the servers after the program, and there was this look of peace and serenity that they that they had. It wasn't like, dude, I've been cleaning after you for 10 days. That they were just like, we were so happy. This was such a great experience for us. We've made friendships here. We feel closer here. That is something that's very contrary to my nature. The giving aspect. But that is something we are all trying to cultivate, hopefully. So yes, I would consider signing up again.
And as something Brian mentioned, I want to expand on. He talked about the servers. So the food, we were only able to eat 2 meals a day, and then dinner was essentially hot tea and then a piece of fruit.
Mhm.
But the food was all prepared by students who had completed this course already, and they came back to be of service.
Mhm.
And part of what the course teaches you is it's really hard, and it's kind of like even what Jesus said: it's easier for a camel to pass the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven. So for those of us who have careers out in the world, it's really hard for us to dissolve our ego, because we're always like, look how clever I am. I can make all this money and support my family.
Yeah.
But when you go there, you meditate, but then you only go to half the meditations, because then you're making food for the students who are there for the first time to help them concentrate on their ability to study. So people go back as servers to just help and be of service to people, which I thought was just very selfless of them to do that. Brian, what's one piece of advice you would give to someone who wanted to take this course?
I'll just do it. If you think about it, you're not going to do it. A million reasons will come up for why this is not the right time, or why, in your case, you're just not able to complete the course. Just do it. My wife talked to me so many times, and she would immediately just say, "Just go do it," And 10 days is a long commitment, but you have to remember, this is not just something you do for yourself. When you return, you will hopefully be just a shining presence in the lives of your family and friends. And I am excited to, rekindle some relationships and kind of see what my relationship is like with people now, when it's not just all about me and what do I get and what are you giving me. There is some change in your heart. I'm not trying to sound sappy, but you do come back changed somehow. And whether you want to intellectualize it or say it's on an emotional level, you kind of do give a damn about other people. And I generally wasn't really like that before. So who knows what goes on from here. I can just tell you how I'm feeling today and what my motivations are. But I feel just a lot more open, and again, a weight has been lifted. I don't know what the weight was, but I do feel so much lighter. I do feel so much brighter. And I feel, I feel like the world has become bigger, because it's not just right here now. Now it's kind of more here.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way. Like I had a 5-hour drive back to Phoenix after the thing, and I just felt so awesome. Like, someone needed to ride with me back to town, and beforehand I'd been like, no, I wanted to do all this stuff. Like I wanted to drive into Joshua Tree, but I was okay. Like, the situation simply was.
Mhm.
And I had a little slightly different look at it. Instead of, I'm not coming back a changed person, I'm coming back who I'm supposed to be, and coming back a more truer version of my energy, because I've stripped away a lot of the conditioning that's been put on me since childhood of this is how I have to be, this is how I have to act, this is how I have to react.
Right.
A lot of that's taken away, and I can be my more authentic self now. And I definitely want to take it again. Even the 29 Palms one was great. I might want to try a different one just to have a slightly different experience within it. And you're right. When I was there, my energy, I felt like I was Doctor Strange by like day 5 or 6. Like I could feel the energy coursing through my veins. I could feel part of the reincarnation, feel part of the energy coming into me from the past. And that's something that I personally have started believing in is the concept of that from a energy is not created or destroyed, standpoint. But it really, I highly recommend it. Again, I would say go in with, I would say an open mind. Yeah, go in with an open mind. They're not going to try to convert you. They're presenting a philosophy that can coexist with whatever religious belief or non-religious beliefs you have. You can again, because Buddha is not a god. Buddha just means enlightened one. And you can be enlightened by learning to listen to your emotions and feelings. So I thought that was very powerful. Before we go, though, it's something I've actually taken a lot about this also, and I have incorporated it into my Radical Acceptance webinar. Shameless plug time for the 4-part series, which starts September 7th. So it's Tuesday nights in September. And it's on Radical Acceptance, and it's broken into 4 parts. So talking about mindfulness, impermanence, radical acceptance, non-judgment of other people and non-judgment of yourself. And this is the course really helped give me some new concepts to add. So my website, Bergeron Wellbeing, check it out if you want to take that course. I still have a couple spots open. Brian, before we go, anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, I definitely benefit every time you and I speak. So I would strongly recommend, looking deeper into these talking, sharing points. Sometimes as men, it's hard to talk. I'm sure for women as well, but sometimes we kind of have a front or a persona. But I think talking honestly, openly with people who are feeling you, who care about you, it really helps you process things in a really healthy manner. So I would strongly recommend that. One quick point about energy. Of course, I believe in energy. Energy is this, energy, but there was so much fear I had. I was certain I would never be sleeping at night because I cannot go to sleep unless I have my cocktail of entertainment and inebriants. But a lot of the people, I think it was some of the servers and some of the old students, they would stay after we went to bed, and they would be in the meditation hall, sending good vibes our way, sending good energy, promoting our success. And I strongly believe that environment was so conducive to peace and rest. I mean, I was waking up before the gong at 4 a.m. every day on my own volition, and that was crazy. So if we can take some of that and bring it back out here, send as many good vibes to people as we can. If that's all it is, I think that makes a world of difference.
Yeah, I agree. And not just positive energy. I sleep less now since I've been home. But doing this meditation, I'm so much more focused. My sleep is deeper, and I have so much more energy during the day. So
same here. I have traded the 2 hours we do of meditation, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night. Those used to be my sleeping hours. And now once the Dodger game's over, I get an hour on my cushion and sleep an hour less, but wake up another hour, and I've been feeling great.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Brian, thank you so much, man. And then, maybe we'll do another one of these, kind of a recap, make sure in 6 months we're still feeling the flow and seeing how it goes. But I appreciate it. If anyone does have any questions for Brian or I, you can type them in the chat even after this video is not live anymore. And Brian will see it because we're friends on Facebook or wherever this is going to be. And be happy to answer any questions you have, or feel free to reach out. So, and if you're in Southern California and you need a good lawyer, Sim Law, check them out. Business stuff, right? Business law?
I sure do.
Awesome. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.